Okay. Welcome committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission Homelessness Prevention Committee. Thank you for joining us. We are using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you would like to comment during the meeting, please type "I have a comment" or "I have a question" in the chat feature, and a message will be sent to the host. Alternatively, you can also use the raise hand feature. In efforts of transparency for all those joining this public meeting, whether by phone or Zoom, we request that you refrain from having side conversations on chat about the content of the meeting. Again, the chat feature is utilized simply as a tool for you to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the discussion. A friendly reminder that going forward, all Legal Services Trust Fund Commission and committee meetings will be recorded and posted to the State Bar website. And another friendly reminder to please just be aware of your surroundings behind you, as this is a video conference. If you if you use your phone to dial into this meeting, please be sure your computer's microphone is on mute to avoid audio feedback issues. And lastly, while joining, audio via computer is highly recommended. If an individual loses audio, they can call in separately using the Zoom conference number.
All right, thank you very much, Vicki. We want to go ahead and start with roll.
Sure. Chris Schreiber.
Here.
Banashe Aklagi.
Here.
Amin Al-Saraf. Herman DeBose. Eric Iskin.
Here.
James Meeker.
Here.
Richard Reines.
Here.
Kim Savage. Okay, we'll move to liaisons. Selena Copeland.
Muted.
I'm muted. I'm here. Hi.
Okay, great. Bonnie Huff. Okay, and our Board of Trustee liaison, Christine Gonag.
I believe I see Herman here now.
Oh, hi, Herman. You're just doing roll. Okay. All right, moving down to staff. Dwan.
Here.
I'm here. Elizabeth.
Here.
Dan.
Here.
Andrea.
Here.
And Brady. I see you. Brady. Okay. Great.
I'm marking him present.
Okay. Great.
Okay. Call for public comment. Any member of the public like to say anything at the moment?
I've allowed the two folks in there if they'd like introduce themselves. Lara Holtz and Mitsuku.
Sorry, Vicki, I wasn't totally sure what you said there.
Does
Allow attendees to talk if they'd like to unmute themselves. No comment from Lara.
Oh, Dawn, I think you're muted. I was going to say the other member of the public, you're not required to introduce yourself, but you'd like to introduce yourself and make public comments, we can unmute you.
I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Do you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
All right, Chris, should we move to the consent?
I just announced that to myself, apparently.
Oh.
So, yeah, hearing no member of the public wanting to make comment, let's move on to the consent item.
I'll move for approval of the action item summary from the November 20 meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, let's go ahead and take a vote.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Aklagi,
Yes.
Alsaroff, DeBose,
Yes.
Iskin,
Yes.
Meeker,
Yes.
Rhinus,
Yes.
and Savage. Okay, motion passes.
Yes.
So part B of the consent, we're going to have to wait on until our next meeting because the minutes were not finalized. So we will go ahead and do that at the next meeting. And I think that brings us to item 4 on our agenda, which is our discussion of the RFP homelessness grants. So Christine, do you want me to lead off or do you want to?
Yeah, go for it.
So I won't linger on this since I think everybody was there at our last meeting, but I just would make a couple of notes. One is that with 39 proposals, the quality of the programs was very high throughout, but obviously the limited amount of funding and the ambitiousness of the projects ensured that we did not fund all of the programs. I believe we ended up funding 12. That's right, isn't it? 12 or was it 13?
It's 12.
It's 12.
12, yeah. And I guess, you know, it was definitely a learning experience for everybody involved in terms of the creation and application of a rubric. And, you know, the process was challenging for a variety of reasons. But in the meeting on December 3rd, that was the first time we had all gotten together after multiple meetings with our group reviewing, you know, a portion of the slate. So we used the opportunity in that December 3rd meeting to recalibrate as a group to ensure that there was equity across the groups and that the ultimate outcome of the scoring was sort of balanced between and among the groups. So at the conclusion of that meeting, we agreed tentatively to fund 12 programs. However, the programs were not, the recommendation was not to fund the programs at the full ask in their budget, but to return to the programs to ask them to whether they would accept funding at a lesser amount and to redo their budgets accordingly. Since the December 3rd meeting, we've been in contact, staff has been in contact with all of the programs and discussed with them both the success of their application and also whether it was possible for them to adjust their budgets. We've heard from each of them. It's been favorable communications. And today we're going to go over the final list to make a vote, and then we'll bring that vote to the commission. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else to add. I don't think so. That's sort of the summary of where we've been and where we are and what we're going to do in the rest of this meeting.
Okay, great, thanks. So on the screen, just a reminder, we have the top 12 that were tentatively recommended, the total requested, and then the tentative funding amount. And just to note that One Justice was receiving their full, the tentative recommendation was to fund them at their full requested amount. So we did not have to go back to One Justice. And then just to give a visual of what the 12 recommended programs look like, and this was included in the meeting materials. Hopefully you can see this fairly well. The map can sometimes appear kind of small, but just to note, there are 2 programs on here with the stars that will be providing services statewide, and then the other programs are represented by different colored dots, and you see we have a good representation across the state, especially with One Justice's project proposal. Are there any comments on the map, or can keep going?
I think if I were looking at this map, this is Rich, I would say it looks to be Bay Area heavy, just visually, keeping in mind the fact that the counties in the southern part of the state are gigantic compared to many of the counties in the north, but it nevertheless gives the impression of being Bay Area weighted. And I think it would be appropriate for, not appropriate, and we should anticipate questions relative to that potential issue.
Rich, just to respond to that, this is just a really quick visual, but there's yes, some misleading visual conclusions from this, because the Bay Area, the dots for the blue dots for the Bay Area, that's a One Justice project. As you'll recall, that the funding for that project isn't very large. So though there is some touches to the Bay Area, the funding actually to Southern California. If we did a chart based on funding levels, it may look differently.
If you took out One Justice, it would look like there's nothing in the Bay Area, and it's all Central Valley and Southern California.
May I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Herman.
Yeah, just for my own information, I'd like to hear the staff response to the discussion with San Bernardino, who asked for 1.8 and got 600,000. And I'd just like to hear what they had to say and how they said they could make the appropriate adjustment with 1/3 of what they asked for.
Yeah. Herman, if you don't mind waiting, we actually would like to give you a recap of every single one of the 12 projects so that everybody's comfortable with the changes and the modification. And we have a slide for San Bernardino.
And I want to accent what Rich said. If you look at the map, maybe there should be a star or an asterisk at the bottom whenever you do this to say that the majority of the dots in the north and are one program that serves primarily the rural community, because otherwise it looks like the third of the state's population is not getting its fair share.
I guess one recommendation there is, I don't know if anybody knows, is a basketball fan, but you can reflect graphically dollar values, but through the size of the dot.
Yeah.
And dot charts do this by just enlarging where more shots take place. So anyway, it would probably be helpful to reflect like the blue dots that are seen there, to the extent that it's 1/17 or whatever of the One Justice project. That dot would be quite small versus San Bernardino would be.
And the other thing to keep in mind, what Christine said, there are 2 projects that are doing statewide projects. And as you also reminder, the RFP is only 25% of the total funding. The 75%, was distributed by formula. And, you know, we believe because it's just geographic formula, the legislative intent was to spread that funding geographically. And so we have geographic spread in terms of HP funding. And it may not translate to RFP, but, you know, the other 20 something million dollars is spread throughout the state.
Yeah, I mean, I think the observation, I'll call it, is that the visual might be misinterpreted, and therefore it isn't necessarily the most helpful to place something in front of somebody that's going to lead to leaving the wrong impression. So yeah, I hear you, Dwan. I think all that sort of speaks to maybe not presenting a chart like this if we feel like it's, you know, requires significant explanation just to have it understood. Anyway.
Do you want us to take it out of the commission meeting? You know, the Bank Grants Committee has always requested this type of chart before, even though there are a lot of caveats. It helps with discussion and visualization, but we're happy to remove it at the commission level if you think it's too misleading with that context.
I mean, I think it's possible that the commissioners are, you know, may want it. I don't know that we need to remove it. It's already been posted, so I don't know that there's, but I don't think we want to linger on it for the reasons everybody's sort of identifying. So just for next time, I don't think it's.
And if I may ask another question, if I look at the green spots in Northern California, and did those counties not submit proposals, or did they submit proposals and they weren't good enough? Because if you look, there's only one dot there. So, and I'm assuming there's some homeless problems in those areas also.
So that area, the Herman, is generally covered by LISNIC, Legal Services of Northern California. They did not submit an HP competitive grant. Christine, can you remind me if there's another smaller project that may have submitted? I don't believe there was, but generally that area is LISNIC's territory.
Yeah, because if I remember the legislation, it said rural, or I forgot the exact, and I'm going to make the assumption that those counties are very rural.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think that I don't, I can't 100% certain. I just know LISNIC didn't say, if there was a county, I believe we probably would have had heavy discussion and scored them high, but I don't recall any discussion. Elizabeth, Dan, did any of your groups? None, my group didn't have.
None from mine.
No, I don't believe we did.
Yeah, do we know why no one from that part of the state applied?
Well, LISNIC got a pretty heavy formula grant. I didn't talk to them specifically, but I would imagine that maybe they didn't want to go for the RFP because they had a sizable formula grant.
And one other thing, Herman, those northern green counties, although they have a large number of rural poor, there are more rural poor in Fresno County.
Yeah, that I understand, but if you look at this,
and as a percentage, actually, Del Norte and some of those northern counties have the lowest share of homelessness among Californian counties, with the exception of Mono County. Those tend to be counties with low levels of reported homelessness, according to the census. So, you know, LISNIC didn't submit, and CRLA submitted for a different part of the state. Yeah. We can only work with what came across the transom.
But Herman, this came up, I don't know if you recall, in the context of bank grants, when we had this map, and there were questions like, oh, you know, why didn't you fund certain parts of the state? And that same kind of reasoning for the bank grants, because we didn't get applications. There was a question about, at that time, the Inland Empire, but we didn't receive applications in that region to fund.
But if you had actually created a map that also included the formula grants on it, I assume the dots would be a lot more evenly distributed throughout the state.
Yeah. The problem with the formula grant one is, as you know, programs do, some programs have statewide and multiple counties. So it was, Christine looked into that, but it was very challenging to do. Okay. And it would have expended a lot of staff time. Not that it was impossible, but we didn't have the bandwidth to do that type of map.
No, but I guess the point is money is being spread all over the state. It just is done through a wide range of grants.
Yeah. That's the piece that's missing here, because this is just the RFP. We fund again, the 75% for the formula is very distributed, based on the modified IOLTA formula, and then IOLTA grants too. That some of that funding is not, they didn't apply for HP because they have IOLTA grants to fund that. So it's, for 2020, we distributed close to $100 million. So this is just a sliver for 2021, what we're distributing.
Thank you, everyone. And I think the comment about making the dots relative to the funding amount makes a lot of sense going forward with using these sorts of visual representations. All right, so we'll get into the more specifics about the recommended proposals and what they came back to us with, starting with public interest law project. As noted here, they requested 600,000 and were recommended for 500,000. So it's not a notable difference, it's not a huge difference from the recommended to requested amount. And what you can see here in red, their only change to their goals and deliverables was decreasing that they would work separately with at least 8 QLSPs as opposed to 10 in urban and rural California to provide program-specific trainings, strategizing and advocacy and litigation support. So they really didn't change much in terms of their goals and deliverables. And what I would note, also just going forward for most of the programs, they were excited to speak with us and hear about the tentative recommendations, and wanted to stay within the realm of what they proposed. So moving on to the other possible areas of change, they didn't have any subgrantees in their original proposals. That remained unchanged. And then looking at the project staff changes, you can see in red that there's a slight decrease in their staffing in regards to the funding recommendation.
And I actually was on a monitoring visit to public interest law projects last week. So I talked at length to the executive director. So they're very excited about the project, and they have already plans I wouldn't say hire new staff, but they have some change at the executive level. So if they are able to hire a new executive director, that the old executive director would actually stay on to manage this project. So we would be getting really bang for our buck with that staffing change.
Moving to the next one, legal aid at work. Again, they requested 824,550 and were recommended for 700,000. Their goals and deliverables remain the same, and their subgrantees were unchanged, with United Way of Salinas County receiving $10,000 per year, and Project Sentinel also receiving $10,000 per year. And then you can see here only a slight decrease in the project staffing FTEs.
And Christine, if I may ask, I don't really care that you didn't show what I'm about to say, but I assume you also made your cuts in administrative costs as well. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Sorry, and I should just should have said that for all the programs that received a slightly lower amount made cuts, pretty much proportional in the non-personnel administrative portions of their budget.
But we're just trying to pull out the relevant pieces for you at high level. And again, like Legal Ed at Work, very small kind of decrease in staffing. It's nominal changes. None of their deliverables are changing. So they're pretty much able to deliver to us their project at $125,000.
Yeah, no, I think
So not a big deal.
This is really helpful. Really well done.
Okay. Next, we have Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, and their project is the Tenant Debt Defense Project. This had a little bit more of a notable cut, and they revised their deliverables a little bit. You can see towards the bottom here. Percentage wise, they maintained 60% of their original deliverables, so they reduced by about 40%. Otherwise, they were, just to give a little bit more background for the project, they are going to establish a replicable model to assist tenants with the consequences of COVID-19 Tenant Relief Act of 2020. So this is AB 3088, which turns outstanding rent owed into consumer debt addressed in small claims court. And if you recall from our meeting on 12/3, we noted that this was a really interesting project and that there's not a lot of pro bonos working in consumer debt. And that was part of the reason that this was such an interesting project and scored highly.
Question. When they go in number D there, 3D, when they go from 120 to 72 and an E from 90 to from 150 to 90, they felt that they could still do a decent job even though they would be eliminating a significant number of the population that they initially wanted to serve?
Yeah, Elizabeth can talk to that.
Yeah, I don't think they're eliminating a significant part of the population that they're intending to serve. I think they're trying to cut back on the staffing for this, and you'll see on the next slide, they also had to take out the subgrant to Betsedic because of the cut. So I actually think, the recommended grant amount is about half of what they're asking for, yet they only decreased their deliverables by 40%, which I think is a credit to their being really efficient with their work and leveraging the pro bono attorneys to help provide legal services.
So will anybody else pick up that 40% that will be eliminated?
No, we actually didn't have any other projects in the Los Angeles area covering this area.
So that 40% would just be not provided services.
Well, we don't know if they're going to go out and try to find other funding, but
right.
Not where we're at this juncture. Elizabeth did have several conversations with them because originally their budget revision, we were unclear whether the depth of the services would be the same or if they were doing cuts to the depth and providing just limited scope. But no, Elizabeth was able to confirm that at least as far as it was communicated to us, the quality and the depth of the services remain the same, but they are just pulling back on the amount of clients that they're serving.
Right. And I would also add that their outreach deliverables remain the same. So they do plan to conduct the same level of outreach to low-income people in LA County who may be impacted by AB 3088. So I think, hopefully they'll be able to find additional funding to supplement or, be able to find another partner who could work with them. So I think given that the recommended funding amount is about half of what they requested, I think what they turned back around was very reasonable.
And so since they cut out the sub-grantee, Betsedic, will they still work with them?
I mean, I think they have an existing relationship with them and have been working with them, perhaps not specifically on this project for these deliverables. But I think they our continuing collaborators in the community.
I mean, one question I had was related to whether the formula funding covered any part of this project for either the subgrantee Bedzedek or for LAFLA.
My understanding is that it does, right, Christine? There's some overlapping activities, and for, I mean, the LAFLA project is a little bit of a different angle in that you'll recall it's the consumer debt issue related to the housing, but they provide traditional UD work. So I would say that's it's a component of a larger project.
Yeah, I think it's complementary.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Okay. Should we move on, Christine, to the next one?
Okay, moving on to Western Center on Law and Poverty and their proposal for affirmatively furthering fair housing in California's rural communities. Their goals and deliverables were largely unchanged. They felt that they would remain true to the scope of their project, which is through community empowerment, training and education, litigation and administrative advocacy, all focused on the intersection of civil rights and housing law. The organizations will apply the powers of AB 686 and related civil rights laws in order to realize greater housing access and community development. This has a bigger chart because they had further subgrantees, because they have 3 subgrantees, which they are keeping, but at a slightly reduced amount. And next I'll go to the changes in project staffing. And then should note, this is the project staffing specifically for Western Center. So there's also staffing with the subgrantees as well. Are there any questions for Western Center?
This is Rich. Is it fair to assume that staff made these percentage cuts in the staffing as opposed to the grant recipient doing that? Or did the grant recipient do this work that we're looking?
The grant recipients revised their budget.
So is it fair to say they basically took the percentage cut, sliced off that portion which might have gone to subgrantees, taking the amount they ultimately received, and simply did the math on a pro rata basis? That's how we get, for example, on line 1, 1.38 FTEs versus 3.24.
I mean, we've had the same conversation before in various commission policy and committee meetings, but there's an absurdity to this, which is, what does it mean to be 0.04 of a paralegal? I mean, that's a level of detail that I just think like is truly, I mean, not exactly sure how to characterize that.
Well, it's an estimate, right? So they know that they want to provide some level of paralegal, and so I mean the thing is with budgeting, we all know, it's not an exact science. It's a little bit of art.
Well, I mean, I get that, but I just think like by reducing it to the 100th place, it starts to make it look like it is a science when in fact so. I mean, I understand what occurred and why it occurred, but I think, you know, this adds a level of detail that just crosses over into, you know, an unnecessary mathematical exercise.
Hey, but just to piggyback on Rich's question, can we assume that the recipients agree with this allocation, that this is the way they're going to do it? Is this something we imposed on them, or they, you know, are they on board with this?
They submit these revisions once we provide them with the recommended dollar amount. So they they update their applications and resubmit them with these allocations.
But we don't tell them how to revise
Yeah,
their
we do.
budget. The way they, you know, a lot of them do it, you know, to doing our pro rata basis is seemingly reasonable. And so a lot of programs do that for ease and for, you know, clarity to us, but we don't prescribe that. We don't actually even make a suggestion. They do it. We give them feedback if we think, like the LAFLA project, Elizabeth had many go arounds with them because the original iteration we felt like was insufficient and you may not approve it. So we gave them technical assistance to clarify certain points, but we don't give them give them requirements of how to do their revised budgets. We leave that up to them.
But Don, let me ask a question. If I asked you originally for 2.3 and you come back and say, well, we're going to recommend 900,000, I will give you what you want also, just to be able to get the resources. But this one bothers me is that the first group they were collaborating was Disability Rights of California. And I just will put something on, I'm on that, on the legislative committee for that particular organization. So I'll just put that out. But if that's a group that needs a lot of services at this point in time with the pandemic, and to cut them from 2.3 to 900,000 and ask them to be able to provide the same level of service. And I'll go back to my original comment when we met before, was that, are we looking for quality? Are we looking for quantity? And if we're looking for quantity, then I'm okay, if you can say that up front. But if we're looking for quality, to go from 2.3 to 900,000, and as someone said, what is 0.04 of a paralegal? How many hours a week does that person provide?
I mean, Herman, my own response to that just is that I think it's pretty difficult to establish that kind of binary. I mean,
which binary? Which binary?
Between quality and quantity. I mean, I think there's a needle to be threaded, and you know, you're trying to toggle is not the right sort of framework, because you're trying to sort of maximize impact and quality. So, I mean, to your point, and the part of it that I think I agree with is that, you know, we received some program applications, for example, that Jim and I reviewed, and I think the assessment was made in our group and then by the committee, the larger group of committee members, that the impact on the money that was being requested was going to be quite small because of the number of individuals that the group planned to serve. So the way that we discussed it in our subcommittee was the bang for the buck proposition. So in other words, you know, if you request $100,000 and you're going to be helping, you know, 10 people, that's a different proposal. It isn't to say it's unworthy, but it's a different proposal than saying I'm going to request $100,000 and I'm going to help 1,000 people. So in that situation, in that sort of hypothetical, you're talking about both quality and quantity in terms of the community that's being served, which you're using to assess the quote unquote quality of the proposal or the project. So I guess, you know, if you're saying the quality of the project versus the quantity of the projects that we're funding, that's a different sort of analysis.
Well, help me understand, in a paralegal in year one, 0.04 for the total grant, 0.12, it helped me understand the binary of quality versus quantity.
Well, Chris, I think there is an answer to that question. What I would do if I were the grant recipient is I would tell my controller that when you report the use of the funds received in this grant, you have a limit. That is 0.12 for a paralegal is a controller's limit on how much to allocate from our grant to that particular expenditure. It doesn't mean that they have 0.12 paralegals working for them. It only means that our grant will pay that amount so as to be on budget. I don't think we can tell from this how many paralegals will be working on this project, only how many paralegals salaries, dollars worth of salary will be paid from this grant for that particular individual.
I want to underscore that. You're completely correct, Rich, and that's why I think these numbers they offer sort of, if you understand them in terms of FTEs and as a function of a budgetary exercise, they have different meaning altogether than if you're thinking of them as humans. I mean, I think like the 0.04 is an absurdity if you're talking about whether you're going to hire someone to work 7 minutes, a day to perform on this. In reality, what's going to happen is they're going to have a paralegal that's doing this work. The paralegal's job duties and execution on the job duties may well be far in excess of 0.04. But the amount billable to the project for that paralegal's efforts is only 0.04 in the first year. I don't think that necessarily comes through in slides like this, and I think it leaves the wrong impression personally. But I don't know a better way to do it, but I'm with you in that this creates what looks to be that's kind of a silly exercise in that respect, but Rich is right. It's an accounting exercise.
Chris, there's one other thing I would add to that, because of the disability rights of California having been carved out of this. These grant applications were in many cases multi-headed hydras. The quality input that would have gone into each was severable. So the quality question is answered affirmatively. This equality program we are supporting, it just doesn't have as many heads to the hydra as they wanted it to be. Disability rights will have to be supported by another grant. We just don't have enough money.
Ultimately, Herman, I guess I take your point. I think I understand it. But I want to be clear. I want to maybe ask you to clarify. It seems like your concern is not about the quality versus the quantity of people served within a grant, but whether the committee's charge was to fund fewer larger projects or more or to spread that money out among more projects that are doing well.
Well, I think that when you try to be as inclusive as you possibly can by providing resources to as many people, that you dilute the possibility in relationship to the quality of work that people can provide. I just remember conversations with the group that organizations that provide services to poor people sometimes have difficulty getting staff because they can't pay them a decent wage as compared to other organizations. And if you look at that and you look at how we're in the process of cutting what people have asked for, what they thought they needed to be able to provide the services that they thought the RFP was requiring, we're saying to them that you can provide these services, but at a much lower cost, which means you may not be able to hire the staff that you thought you needed to be able to provide these services at the quality level that you thought you were able to provide.
But I'm not sure that's right though, because isn't it the case that an organization could say, we're going to serve the same number of people less effectively, or we're going to serve fewer people with the same and maintain the level of service? I mean, that's sort of
they will probably
the binary.
They will probably serve fewer people. And especially in this
Yeah,
time,
and
when we're looking at what COVID is doing to people, and especially people of color, which generally goes to these organizations seeking these services. So instead of serving 10 people, we'll serve 3 or 4. So what happens to those other 6?
well,
But we now,
isn't
we now have other organizations that will be able to serve some people as well. You know, we made the judgment that funding Western Center at 35% or whatever would enable them to provide a good quality of service to a number of people, maybe not as many as they wanted, but we're also enabling San Bernardino to serve people in their area.
Mhm.
So that's the judgment we made.
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess I'm wondering if you, I mean, like, what your response would be to this idea that if you're funding 10 people with one program, to use the example you were just discussing, are you, and you're directing the funding toward the organization to fund 10, are you not then not funding, you know, an organization elsewhere that would itself be funding some number of people? So, I mean, there's a zero-sum nature of this to some extent, right? If somebody doesn't.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to note that Selena had asked if she could make a brief comment.
Sure.
And then Christian, I have just a point to make as well.
Thanks for letting me make a brief comment. I mean, I think that Herman's points are well taken, that you don't want to give so little to an organization that it would throttle them. And there's something called the nonprofit starvation cycle, where organizations promise to do way too much for far too little, and then they end up gobbling up all their reserves and restricted funding in order to kind of bridge the gap. But I trusted State Bar staff when they reached out to these organizations. They said, you know, can you do this project for this budget? And then I also trust the organizations thought it through. And if they couldn't do the project for the reduced budget, they would come back and have a little bit more back and forth. You know, the State Bar staff here have good relationships with organizations. And you know, no matter what, there's a great value added here, because all of these organizations are having a large chunk of these RFP funds to be able to build a core of a new project or a core of a much larger expanded project, which if they have, you know, for example, Western Center on Law and Poverty with this $900,000 that they're able to do work and have, you know, sub-grantees, they can leverage this for more funding. So if they had a vision for the $2.5 million project and the State Bar is providing almost $1 million of that, perhaps they can use that in going to other funders to say, listen, we have $900,000, the project really could have been larger, you know, can you help us bridge the gap? And I think that you're just in a really tricky place, because these are really amazing project narratives that they all look so fantastic that it's hard to cut them all back. But I think the only alternative is that you just fund fewer organizations, and then you're cutting out the possibility those organizations could use as core funding to get matching funds and to really leverage other individual donors to build to that project. But I mean, I don't envy your job. I actually have a really tough time when I have to find, you know, when we do, you know, awards or honorees, it's really hard to pick when it all looks fantastic. But I think that this is just an amazing opportunity, that there's so much funding available in the middle of a pandemic when we're so worried about other sources of funding, that this is going to provide the core of funding for a lot of really fantastic projects. So I just wanted to say, Herman, your points are very, very well made, but I think that in a time in which you have to choose who to receive the funding, this seems like a good compromise.
And I just want to note, Kim Savage is called in, and she's having trouble logging in, Christine and Vicky, but can you elevate that 510 number? That's Kim Savage.
It's been unelevated, but unfortunately I'm not able to unmute her.
Okay.
I'll keep trying though.
Okay, thank you.
So I wanted to just underscore and echo and applaud a few of Selena's points. The leveraging is real, and that the way in which, you know, programs can use these funds to go and leverage to increase their ask is real. I mean, that's just what programs do. That's what my program did. So I thank you for bringing that point to the forefront. I think the point though, where Herman is pinpointing is a good one. You literally asked, if the idea is to fund more organizations, then let's just say so. If the idea is to fund fewer organizations and, maximize their requests, let's say that. I think when we go back to the language of the legislation, there's what they've provided this body is with discretion. And so we're utilizing our discretion. And I think the majority of this body is saying, based on the way in which we selected these programs to fund, is let's try to distribute it in such a way where not only is there impact, their sustainability, but let's see how many we can actually support with the limited amount of funds. I mean, again, $7 million is not a lot of money given the need that's out there. So I just wanted to put that in, that there's an issue here that I think we need to not step over, and that is that we were granted discretion and we're utilizing that discretion. And I think Kim just joined us.
Can I respond to Selena if you don't mind? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, go ahead,
Yes,
Herman.
go right ahead.
Go ahead, Herman, sorry.
Selena, my comment, I appreciate all your comments, but I think one of the things that you said is what we always do to nonprofits and organizations that generally serve poor, is that we'll give them a piece of money, but then we'll say to them, go out and find some more to do that. Rather than saying, take this money and do what you want to do or what you think you need to do, rather than saying, I'll give you a portion of that, then I'm gonna put the pressure back on you to have somebody else write a proposal to go find the additional resources to do what you really want to do. And we see that constantly throughout all nonprofits and poor and poverty serving agencies, that we will give them a little, but then we're going to put pressure on them to go find monies from other place to do the other thing that they really want to do.
This is Rich. I just had one thing that might be helpful in the context of this questioning is to know the total amount that was requested by all of the 39. Once you know that's the denominator and that the numerator is 7 million, which was where we were, where we are required to fund to, then you realize that the choice is between that small fraction or some bigger fraction by doing what we've done. And I looked at the chart in vain to find a total at the bottom.
The total request, Rich, was 39 million.
Okay, so we were in a position of perhaps funding at below the 20% level, should we have chosen to provide some portion of each of those grants or grant those applications in part. Okay, thanks.
Chris, did you?
Yeah, I mean, why don't we just go on to the next slide?
Okay, the next organization that we're looking at is Community Legal Aid SoCal. And their recommended funding is at $650,000. They added some additional language noting that it would be up to 2 new MSW students annually. They added a little bit more actually here, with 35 clients served in 2021 and 75 clients served in 2022 and 2023. And then again, adding up to 2 new attorneys annually, and here changing the increase to the full scope representation from CLA SoCal pro bono in housing homelessness proceedings to 75 cases in 2021 and 95 cases in 2022 and 115 cases in 2023. And then slight changes in these other 3 deliverables with up to 3 cases per year, that it would be co-counseling down from 5, and then here the goal of 600 pro bono hours per year on assistance at clinics and full representation instead of 800, and at least 3 meetings per year with firm pro bono coordinators. And then moving to their subgrantee changes. They proportionally changed their subgrant to 25,000 from 50,000, and then their staffing changes went down a little bit here as well.
So these all seem reasonable to us. You know, how they did their cuts, you know, cuts in staffing. So we didn't see any issue. That our recommendation is to approve it as is.
Okay, and then going to Public Law Center, they did not change their goals and deliverables. Their recommended was just under 200,000 from their requested amount, and their subgrantee only went down $10,000 each to Kennedy Commission and Orange County United Way, and then their project staffing went down slightly. As Dawn said with the last program as well, we felt these changes were appropriate. Okay, and then next one is PARA for HP statewide tenants stability project, and they had noted with the reduced award, sorry, they would instead be able to counsel 509 individuals down from 709. So not a large change in their goals and deliverables. And then they did not have propose a subgrantee, so that remains unchanged. And then the project staff changes are in red, noting that those went down proportionally to the recommended amount. Moving on to mental health advocacy services. The recommended amount wasn't that far off from the requested amount. So they only slightly modified their deliverables, making it down at least 100 unduplicated clients as opposed to 120. And then 8 Know Your Rights trainings, just down a little bit from 10 trainings for at least 400 people. And moving to their staffing, and also they did not have any subgrantees, and their staffing changes were proportional to the amount that was recommended, and we didn't have any concerns noted for any of the changes for this project. And then we are at Inner City Law Center project, the homelessness prevention through economic stability. And looking at their deliverables, this was proportional to the recommended funding. It went down slightly, that they would connect with at least 1,200 tenants instead of 1,650, and that the project would outreach and provide education to over 300 individuals, which didn't change, and legal services up to 100 individuals. And then looking at the subgrantee changes, this was proportional to the recommended amounts, and those were decreased. And these go to LA LGBT Center, Vetsetic, and Vetsetic. And then also the changes in staffing that were proportional. And again, staff felt that that these were appropriate. Okay, moving on to Central California Legal Services. They added a number actually that wasn't provided the first time, 525 eligible tenants that they would be providing direct legal services and legal education and or referrals to, and that they would establish a minimum of 2 rural housing resource centers in collaboration with their subgrantee CSET to further serve eligible tenants in collaboration with trusted community leaders and organizations. And down here with program staff will provide legal services in collaboration with partner agencies who serve primarily rural residents, assisting a minimum of 525 individuals per year, which is down from 1,000. And that they noted in their third deliverable that they'll build CSETs along with other identified community organizations, internal housing navigator advocates in Tulare County to recognize housing legal issues and respond appropriately. And I know that Dan reached out to this program and had multiple conversations with them. Dan, did you have anything else to add?
Just that you're right. The original proposal didn't have much specificity, so it's hard to say how these numbers are different than what they would have been before. They went from 3 attorneys down to 1, but kept their 1.5 paralegals, kept their legal secretary, and cut from 2 community workers down to 1 community worker. They've added a $30,000 subgrant for their community partner. Considering that we've taken them from $2.67 million down to $950,000, I think that the way that they're making cuts reflects a focus on service delivery. I'll also mention, relevant to I think what Rich said earlier, that their admin charges have gone from $140,000 a year down to $15,000 a year. So they've really economized.
And then that leads us to Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino.
I'm just going to temporarily mute Kim. And if Kim, if you wouldn't mind just putting yourself on mute so we don't get the feedback.
And if you had a comment, feel free to unmute or just let us know in the chat. So we talked about this very briefly at the beginning. So we recommended $600,000 to Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino. They revised their deliverables slightly. The working group, I was in the working group with Eric and Amin, who reviewed this application. It was a very strong quality application from an organization in an area that's, really could use these sorts of resources. We thought it was very innovative, but we also noted that the budget was a little lopsided towards non-personnel and administrative costs. And that is what the conversation that I had with their executive director when we discussed the cut and what the budget might look like. That was something that I noted, that the working group noted, and I know that he looked back at that and was also seeking guidance on how to work on proposing budgets. So most of their cuts were from the non-personnel and administrative portions of the budgets. And you can see here that the proposed deliverables didn't go down proportionally, they only went down slightly.
What do you attribute to that?
Sorry.
Yeah, like what do you attribute the what appears to be, I mean, they're hewing to the previous deliverables despite a 70% cut on the original budget.
I think that they were including I think they were including a number of things in that original budget for non-personnel and administrative that were more beneficial to the program as a whole, as specifically to the project. And that was part of the conversation that we had, that looking at some of the line items and determining whether it was really for the project or for the organization. Means sometimes we do get budgets that are showing pro rata shares. This budget had a little bit more than just pro rata share, and where it was pro rata share, it was quite high, specifically for this budget. So I think it was a little bit of a learning process with the proposal. Just a reminder that this is a new executive director working through submitting the proposal. But he felt very strongly that they could stick to very close to what their deliverables were going to be. They were very excited about being selected. And just to show you next, their project staffing changes, where they made the biggest cut was paralegals. And in our working group, what we did discuss is they had 4 paralegals, and we did feel that was a little high on staffing for what they were proposing. So that is an area that they cut. The paralegals would be doing a lot of work with the hotline.
Hey, Christine?
Yes.
So one of the features of this project was that they were going to develop some technology.
Mhm.
You don't show that here. Are we continuing to fund that?
They are. So one thing that yes, sorry, they are. They had put the organizations that they're working with to develop that technology in subgrants as subgrantees, but they're not really, as we discussed in our working group, they're not necessarily subgrantees. They're more contracted services. The Stanford lab is helping them develop the texting, and then LawYaw is helping them with the documents, the interactive documents, and those remain in the budget. They just aren't showing up as subgrantees because they weren't true subgrantees. So that brings us through the 12 recommended proposals. I'm sorry, did anybody have any further questions? Sorry, I should have asked any further questions about San Bernardino.
I guess it'd be helpful to hear just from staff about their overall conversations. And I know we touched on it briefly, but what was the general takeaway from those conversations in discussing, you know, these proposed cuts, and just more generally about, you know, their experience, you know, in the application, et cetera.
So go ahead, Christine.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you know, programs were excited to, I think as I mentioned, they were excited to hear that they were being tentatively recommended for funding. And I would say I didn't get a lot of pushback about the funding level so much, just the recognition of that they would, you know, make some adjustments to their proposal. But Duan?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. You know, staff, we met several times because the vast majority of programs, I believe like 7 or 8, the first time that they submitted the budget, there was no issue because it's very close to their deliverables, or there were minor cuts in staffing. And then there were about 3 or 4 that we had to provide a lot more technical assistance. Some of it was just an error in their part. They submitted numbers that were low and it looked too low to us. We need clarification. San Bernardino is a program that Christine has been working with them for months, providing them like very in-depth technical assistance. Elizabeth had many calls with LAFLA. So there were a few that required a bit more conversation back and forth. But I would say generally though, everybody was really excited, appreciative. They understand that this kind of is part of the process in terms of cuts, because a lot of these programs have received discretionary funding from us. It's unlike partnership where it gets funded at very close to what it is. With bank grants, with other discretionary grants, there are severe cuts. So this is part of, and you know, programs have different approaches. There are some programs that we know, because we review a lot of their discretionary grants, that it's poured into staffing. And so when they go to do the cuts, it's what they ask for is conservative or on par realistically. And there are programs that have a lot of padding, which, you know, you've probably could guess by when we've gone through. So you know, that's part of it's I would say a philosophical decision from one program to another to ask sky's the limit, or to have a reputation of being in line with more of realistic budget. So that's a strategy question, and we get that all the time. Should we aim low and try to get more fully funded, or should we ask for the sky? We don't really provide that type of levels technical assistance, but we do work with them when there are cuts. And so this is part of it, the going back and forth with them, and it's just they're used to it with us, and they appreciate the opportunity.
Did the programs going into this process know that we had a total of $7 million to distribute?
Yeah. We sent it out the email. We've been informing them at every juncture. LAC, as you know, participates, and yes. So this is not surprising. They knew that we had 39 in requests and we had 7, and that they were hard decisions that the commission had to make. And it was the same on the bank grants. The bank grants received similar levels of proposals and had limited funding as well. I would say partnership is really the only discretionary grant in our office where it's a little less competitive.
I mean, I guess my response is that, or my hope, I should say, is that the programs, and it sounds like they were enthusiastic and happy to have the additional resources. I mean, when we sort of pitched this to the community in the convening in September, I think we did really push them to be ambitious and to think, you know, into new geographic areas, into new collaborations with across organizations and whatnot. I mean, I do think given the timeline that we put them under, we would probably see even more collaboration and more ambition, let's say, if they had more time. But it does seem to me like the grants that we did get in were extremely ambitious relative to sort of what their typical funding and grant proposals from the bar have been. So yeah, I hope that their experience was positive. Obviously, you're talking to the winning group, so if it's not positive for them, then I don't know who it would be. But anyway,
I would say that those that I communicated with did have a positive experience. I do think that to the point that you just made, it was a short amount of time to come up with a proposal, and some of the programs did note that it was a bit of a struggle for some of them to pull it all together, in addition to everything else that was going on and all the other requirements from us and from their other funders. So there's been a lot of competing requests on the programs, but also, as you noted, we got really great proposals.
So I think at this point, we have to vote on both the formula funding as well as these RFPs, and we'll do that in 2 separate votes. I want to make sure anybody else has an opportunity to be heard or to comment at this point. And then Christine, if you can just put up the RFP list and the proposal amounts, and then we will, I will entertain a motion for that recommendation on the RFP amounts, and we'll vote as a committee to take that to the full commission meeting this afternoon. Can you?
Yeah,
I know it's in the materials. Oh, okay.
And just as Christine's pulling it up, you just want to let you know that there's a lot of communication that happens with staff and programs. A lot of programs call us in advance of even the committee meetings and the working group meetings to get a sense, and we share very frankly with them so they know for their budgeting. I mean, it's very close by the time they get their final formal award, which we'll send out tomorrow, to having to launch in January. That is just such a short period of time that we have to let the programs that it doesn't look like they're going to get funded kind of know if they reach out to us.
Joanne, on that point, I have to say that, this puts, I think, everybody, including the programs, into this, and certainly staff, into this position that I hope we find a way to address in terms of the relationship between the bar and the legislature. And I guess, I guess I just would appreciate or invite staff. It may not be you, and we may want to do it at the full commission meeting, but if Andrea can, or somebody else can talk about the relationship building effort between the bar and the legislature to ensure that, maybe the public policy here be tinkered with to sort of allow more time or allow more input on that end. We don't really want to ever look $31 million gift horse in the mouth. So I'm not suggesting that we would turn it down, but it does really, I think, affect programs, staff, and, delivery of services ultimately.
So we have 2 comments, one from Kim. Kim, do you want to unmute yourself to make your comment? Or sorry, do you need to unmute?
Okay, sorry, I had technological difficulties and got in through the back door of Google. I mean, I've said this before, and I just think that, and I know I'm saying it a little late in the discussion this morning, but I really think in a future RFP that we need to have a ceiling on the RFP application. I just think it will make it easier for everyone. And it's difficult to decide what that ceiling will be, but I just think it'll make the process more realistic for all of us.
Hi, Chris. I just wanted to follow up on your comment about discussions with the legislature about future RFPs, and would love to, maybe take time to get more suggestions on, having been through this process now more than once, how we think, on the grant making side, what parameters in how that would come through in the future would make this a better process for on this end, and of course on the outcome end with the grant making. So yeah, would love to talk that through more and figure out what points and suggestions and what would be the best way to maybe raise some of those suggestions for future future money that comes through.
Yeah, thank you.
Hopefully it will come through. So
yeah, thank you. I wasn't sure you were on. I just with my screen view. So thanks for that. And when we ultimately have sort of everything sorted, it'll be good to sort of take a breath and.
Yeah. And frankly, I'm learning how this process is working, and observing all of this has been incredibly informative for me in this role. And so would love to regroup on the other side of, getting this grant making out, and figure out how we can reflect on how to improve things going forward.
And Herman had raised his hand.
Yeah, just 2 points. I want to accent what Kim said, that with a limited amount of money, there should be a ceiling on what agencies can ask for. And then the other piece for me was that if the legislatures mean rule, let them say rule rather than rule and undeserving populations. Because I think, as I said earlier, that created some confusion for me. So if you're going to talk to the legislature, just be clear, ask them to say what they really mean. Because it seemed like they wanted rule, but they just put other language in there to at least confuse me. So those would be my 2 comments.
Thank you. Okay.
Just one quick comment that I'd like to make. The commission's the funnel through which these funds flow. They could never have flowed 100% to each of the 39 applicants. Our job is to, in some reasonable manner, it seems to me, select the recipients who will do the most with the money. But our job isn't really a quality job. We don't know what happens to the money in any great detail once it's dispensed. Our job, I think, is to set up criteria that are reasonably fair, that can withstand scrutiny from the community. And beyond that, when we give the Public Interest Law Project a grant of $500,000, it's up to them to make it a quality project.
Okay, we have a list on the screen at the moment of the 12 programs and the funding amounts that we as a committee have whittled their program requests down to. So I'm going to entertain a motion that and I think we have the language. I'll do my best. Can you tell me? I will entertain the following motion if anyone wants to make it. All right, thank you. You're nimble. And I'll read it in the record. Should the Homelessness Prevention Committee reaffirm its tentative recommendations? And the motion is resolved that the Homelessness Prevention Committee approve the RFP grant award recommendations as listed in the meeting materials, which were just on the screen.
Christian, I will move.
Thank you, Bonnie Sheng. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Eric. Take roll.
Great. Schreiber,
Yes.
Aklagi,
Yes.
Alsaroff, DeBose, Herman.
can't get. Yes, yes.
Iskin,
Yes.
Meeker,
Yes.
Rhinus,
Yes.
and Savage.
Yes.
7 votes.
Great. Motion passes.
All right, thank you, everybody. I know that was yeoman's work. Now let's vote for the recommended approval of the formula funding. This is our last item on the agenda. Look at us moving so fast. It's music to my ears. Okay.
Would you like me to,
Yeah,
to go through?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Really quickly. So back at our October 27th meeting, we found the 71 programs eligible for formula funding, and their tentative allocations were released on October 28th. The distribution, as a reminder, for formula funding is $22,87,500. We provided the programs just about 2 weeks to submit their budgets based on their allocation. And then staff reviewed the submitted budgets and would then elevate anything requiring committee approval and discussion. We do have 2 issues to briefly talk about, and I'll get to those right now. So there was only one program that slightly deviated from the recommended 75-25% personnel versus non-personnel. Just a reminder, like the IOLTA and EAF and all of our grants, we recommend this 75-25 percentage, and when it deviates, we elevate it to the committee and commission to review and make the ultimate determination of whether to approve. So Child Care Law Center, their percentage fell to 66.68%. And this was due to a contract service for 3 short videos that would be done in 7 different languages with a cost of $45,000. So this put their percentages a little bit below that recommended amount. The staff recommendation, I'm jumping ahead of my own slide a little bit, but the staff recommendation was to approve this a deviation. And then the other issue that we're elevating to the committee to determine is AIDS legal referral panel is allocated a $50,000 formula grant, and they would like to use the grant in 2 years versus the 3 years, and they want to continue funding for their full-time housing attorney, who is partly funded from the previous EAF HP funding and would be continued, would use this for continued funding after that funding grant period ends. And again, we recommend approval for this organization. Let me go to the next slide. Are there any questions on either of those? Doesn't sound like it. Should I move to the motion then?
Yeah, I think you should.
Right, great.
All right, so there's a proposed resolution on the table, which is the question of whether we should concur with staff recommendation regarding the budgetary matters discussed, as well as pass the following resolution, which is resolved that the Homelessness Prevention Committee recommends for approval the 71 budgets for the homelessness prevention formula. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Rich. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Any further discussion? Let's take roll.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Akalagi,
Yes.
Al-Saraf, DeBose,
Yes.
Iskin,
Yes.
Meeker,
Yes.
Rhinus,
Yes.
and Savage.
Yes.
7 votes.
Great, motion passes. That is the end of our PowerPoint, but I want to circle back with Dwan. Is there any other?
I believe that takes care of our business for the committee level, and we'll bring forward these recommendations to the commission this afternoon.
You know, Dwan, I don't know if there is a state, a PowerPoint slide with a state map that has the formula funding on top of the, yeah, if not, then
We
yeah,
don't.
I'm not at, yeah, that's fine.
We don't have it. Christine looked into trying to do it, and it would expend a lot of staff time, so we were not able to do that. But you know, we have the spreadsheet that we'll present to, right, Christine, to the commission that has the formula amounts, because they have to approve that officially. You've already seen a version of that, I think 2 meetings ago, and that has the counties, right, Christine?
Yes, it did.
Yes, that has the service counties. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that wraps up our business.
Christian, before we do wrap up, I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge the staff for all of the hard work. This is their heavy lift allowed for those of us on the commission to be able to do the work that we're doing. And I don't want to step over the amount of hours, and we don't even know what we don't even know in terms of what they really do to do the great work that they do. So, you know, this is an opportunity to really make sure that you guys know how much we appreciate you.
Yes, Marcia, you're stealing my gratitude thunder.
Sorry,
but I
there's a lot of gratitude to go around.
Totally, but I echo the sentiment completely, and just want to say that, but you know, not only to staff but to the committee members, there was a lot of work that we put in. This was a sort of a delicate process at times, which I really appreciate. But staff, you know, we're at the tip of the iceberg, and I know you guys are the large mass below the surface. So grateful for all your efforts.
You know, while we're throwing gratitude around, Christian, I think you did a great job chairing this committee.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So good work.
Thank you.
Second the motion.
So we will see. And you know, one last thing is, you know, we sort of anticipated that this meeting might itself take 3 hours, which is why it got moved from 10 to 9. And so I appreciate everybody's, you know, part of the reason why it moved so fast is because everybody was so engaged throughout the process, which is a real tribute to staff and to the committee members. We just didn't have to, you know, we had our robust discussions, and so today it was very efficient, and I'm grateful to save you a little bit of time. I'll see everybody at noon.
Can I sorry,
Yep,
I just
go ahead.
one comment? I just wanted to also thank the committee members and the bank grant committee members that readily agreed to join this committee and round it out to 8 members, and all of the working group meetings that everybody had. You know, I think that this round of funding in particular was definitely, as noted, a really heavy lift for the committee, and we really appreciate how engaged everybody was and responsive. And I think even though these meetings have been a bit long, the discussion has been really helpful and really great, and will lead us to a better practice better practices going forward too, and for the money that we hope to get soon.
And can I just do one last thank you to Christine for doing such a fabulous job being the committee coordinator. Christine's worked really tirelessly ever since we found out that the legislation passed to do research and the convening. And, you know, Christine led the breakout sessions and has worked with Chris, and really thank you, Christine.
Dawn kind of went where I was going, which is that, I mean, Christine has not been on staff for a super long time, and Christine, you just dove in and got deeper and deeper into the weeds. And I mean, that really stood out for me. And I mean, all the staff did a great job, but you being one of the newer ones, you just like quickly caught up, and that was really, really great for us.
Ruth, for the greater good, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it, all the efforts. Thanks, and see you in 85 minutes.
See you all soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. See you soon.